This is Atlas, speaking to you from station below zero. If you're hearing this, you're still fighting, and that means there's still hope. The world outside might be buried under ice and snow, but as long as there are voices on the air, we're not entirely frozen. I don't know where you are, and I don't know what you've faced to tune in, but you've made it to the right place. This broadcast is for the survivors, the ones still moving, still searching, still refusing to give up. I'm speaking to you from deep underground, where the walls hum with the steady rhythm of a generator keeping the frost at bay. It's not much, but it's shelter. Above, the wind carves through what's left of the world, turning buildings to sculptures and rivers into veins of solid ice. I've been here for, well, I don't know exactly how long. Days and nights blur together when the sun rarely rises. But every moment spent talking to you makes this isolation worth it. The Earth as we knew it is gone. The sudden shift didn't give us time to prepare. What started as storms turned into an unrelenting freeze. First came the floods, swallowing coastlines, and then the snow began to fall. Not the soft kind you'd catch on your tongue as a kid. The snow was heavy, relentless, and buried everything it touched. Cities disappeared under the weight of it. Highways froze into forgotten paths, and the oceans became fields of shattered ice. Now, the entire planet feels like a giant snow globe someone smashed against the ground. The question I keep asking myself, and maybe you've asked it too, is how did it all happen so quickly? One day, the world was ablaze with news of rising temperatures, hurricanes, and wildfires. Then the next, it was like the planet just snapped. The balance tipped, and suddenly we were on the wrong side of survival. Maybe it was something we did or didn't do. It doesn't matter anymore. The why of it won't keep you alive. What matters is right now. This broadcast and what I can offer you is a thread, fragile, yes, but strong enough to hold on to if we're careful. I can't promise salvation, but I can give you what I know. It's all I have to give. Out there, beyond the frost-covered ruins, you're not alone. Even if it feels that way. Every time I speak, I picture someone. Maybe you, huddled close to a crackling fire or buried in layers of scavenged clothing, clinging to a battered radio as my voice breaks through the static. You're the reason I do this. Some of you might be wondering who I am, why I'm here, why I'm talking to you instead of braving the cold like the rest. My name is Atlas, not the one who held the sky, but maybe the one holding a map of what's left. I used to work with weather systems, satellites, forecasts, patterns. I spent years staring at computer models, telling people where the storms would land and when. Funny, isn't it? I thought I could predict the chaos, but when the first wave of ice storms hit, all our models were wrong. Every single one of them. I was in the field when the systems crashed. One moment we were tracking what we thought was just another freak weather event, and the next it was like the atmosphere tore itself apart. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. The freeze came faster than anyone could imagine. I made it to shelter barely. Some didn't. Many didn't. Now I'm here, and they're not. If you're still alive, then you've already proven yourself tougher than most. The cold doesn't just bite, it crushes. It seeps into your bones, makes you doubt every step you take, every breath you draw. But you're still moving, aren't you? You're listening. That means you've made it through something already. Hold on to that. Hold on to the fact that every day you're alive is another day the freeze hasn't beaten you. This broadcast isn't just about survival tips or weather updates, though you'll hear plenty of those. It's about connection. The cold strips so much away. Comfort, routine, community. But it doesn't have to take everything. As long as you can hear my voice, you know someone else is out there. Someone who gets it. Someone who understands what it means to keep fighting when it feels like the whole world wants you to stop. So here's the deal. I'm here to guide you, to share what I've learned. It's not much, but it's more than nothing. I'll talk about the storms, the shelters, the food, the water, everything that might give you a little edge. It won't always be easy. Hell, it won't ever be easy. But you didn't tune into this broadcast because you wanted easy, did you? You tuned in because you wanted a chance. I don't know how long this signal will last. Sometimes the generator coughs and sputters, and I wonder if it's giving up like everything else. But for now, I'm here, and as long as I can keep speaking, I will. For you, For anyone still listening, this is Atlas from Station Below Zero. Stay close. We have work to do. Survivors, listen carefully. If you're anywhere near the remnants of New Eden or the Eastern Plains, you need to act now. A massive cold front is bearing down, and this one's not like the others. I've been tracking it for hours. Wind speeds peaking at over 150 miles per hour. Visibility dropping to zero. Temperatures plunging to levels that'll freeze exposed skin in seconds. This isn't just another storm. It's a death sentence for anyone caught in its path. The models I'm piecing together, what's left of them, show the storm cutting a jagged swath across the region. It'll hit New Eden first, then surge westward, swallowing everything in its wake. If you're near that area, don't think. Just move. You've got maybe 2-3 hours at most before the first gusts start howling through. By then, it'll be too late to escape. If you're already hunkered down, reinforce your shelter immediately. Seal any cracks or gaps where the wind can sneak in. Use snow to insulate. Yes, snow. It might seem counterintuitive, but packed snow can block the wind better than nothing. If you've got heavy tarps or plastic sheets, secure them tightly against doors and windows. And whatever you do, don't let the cold seep inside. Once it takes hold, it's almost impossible to fight off. Now, for those of you still moving, listen closely. Traveling through this storm is a gamble, but if you have no other choice, here's what you need to know. Stick to low ground, valleys, riverbeds, anywhere the wind is less likely to tear through. Avoid open plains. The gusts will hit hardest there, and the sheer force can knock you off your feet, or worse, carry you into something far less forgiving. If you find yourself caught in whiteout conditions, don't panic. Panic will get you killed faster than the cold. Use a stick, a pole, or anything long and sturdy to test the ground ahead. Snow drifts can hide deep crevices, and frozen rivers are traps waiting to snap shut. If the ice cracks beneath you, move slowly and deliberately. Running will only make it worse. Here's another thing. The storm isn't just wind and snow. It carries something else, something I don't fully understand yet. I've heard survivors call it the ice bite. The air itself feels alive, freezing faster than seems natural. Metal tools become brittle and shatter. Exposed skin turns to frost in moments. If you have to go out there, layer up as much as possible. Duct tape your seams if you've got it. Even a small gap can mean the difference between life and death. Pay attention to the sound, too. The wind will howl, yes, but beneath that, there's something deeper. A low groan that travels through the ice. That's the warning sign. If you hear it, the storm is about to shift, and when it does, the worst of it isn't far behind. If you're thinking about waiting it out, let me be clear. You need to be absolutely certain your shelter can hold. These storms have a way of finding the weak spots. A poorly sealed door, a crack in a wall, even a loose roof tile. Any one of these could be your undoing. The wind doesn't just push. It pries, digs, searches for a way in. And once it finds one, it's relentless. I know this all sounds impossible. I won't lie to you, it is. This storm is bigger, faster, and deadlier than anything we ever faced before the freeze. But that doesn't mean you can't survive it. Preparation and quick thinking are your weapons. Use them. Let's talk about timing. The storm's leading edge is moving at about 40 miles per hour, which gives it a deceptively slow appearance. Don't be fooled. Once it hits, it accelerates, dragging the worst of the cold behind it. You'll feel the temperature drop first. A sudden, sharp chill that cuts through even the thickest layers. That's your cue. If you feel it, you're already out of time. I wish I could give you more than just words. A map, coordinates, a safe place to go, something tangible. But all I've got is this signal and what little I've managed to learn from the fragments of data still coming through. For now, it'll have to be enough. Survivors near New Eden, if you're still hearing me, please don't wait. The storm is coming, and it won't show mercy. Move now. Move fast. This is Atlas, and you're listening to Station Below Zero. Stay with me. There's more to come. Survivors, let's talk about water. You can go weeks without food, but without water, you're done in days. The cold has made it harder to find and even harder to trust. Most of what's left is frozen, hidden beneath layers of ice and snow, and drinking it raw is as much a gamble as stepping onto thin ice. But it's not impossible. If you know where to look and how to handle it, you can keep yourself going. The first thing you need to do is find a source. Snow seems like the obvious choice, but don't rely on it unless you absolutely have to. Snow is mostly air, and it takes an enormous amount of it to yield just a little water. Worse, eating snow directly will drop your core temperature faster than you think. You might quench your thirst for a moment, but you'll be paying for it with hypothermia. If snow is all you have, gather it and melt it first. Look for frost on exposed surfaces, windows, metal railings, anything that hasn't been disturbed. Frost is denser than snow and often forms purer water when melted. It's not a long-term solution, but it's better than eating mouthfuls of snow. If you're near abandoned buildings or urban areas, keep an eye out for gutters or drain pipes. Meltwater sometimes pools there when the ice shifts or thaws during brief temperature spikes. You'll need to be cautious, though. Water sitting for too long can pick up contaminants, oil, rust, debris, and it's not always visible. The same goes for frozen rivers, lakes, or ponds. Ice-covered water sources might look promising, but don't let appearances fool you. The freeze often traps everything beneath it: chemicals, bacteria, even decaying matter. If you're going to use ice from these places, you must treat it before drinking. Trust me, the cold won't kill you nearly as fast as dysentery will. So how do you make it safe? Start by melting it, and I don't mean over an open flame unless you have no other choice. Flames tend to leave soot and ash in your water if you're not careful. If you've got a metal container, use that. Position it close to the fire, not directly in it, to let the ice melt slowly and evenly. The more controlled your heat source, the better. Once you've melted the ice or snow into water, it's time to purify it. If you don't have access to purification tablets or filters, and let's face it, most of us don't anymore, boiling is your best option. Bring the water to a rolling boil for at least 1 minute. Longer if you're above higher altitudes. That'll kill off most pathogens and make it safe to drink. If boiling isn't an option, you're in tougher territory. You can try filtering the water through layers of cloth to remove debris, but that won't make it safe from bacteria or chemicals. Activated charcoal can help if you've scavenged any from old water filters or even certain types of fire ash, but it's not foolproof. Use this only if you're absolutely desperate. Here's another tip: think small. Icicles, for example. They're less likely to be contaminated than ground-level water sources, especially if they're forming in open areas away from structures. Snap them off, melt them down, and you've got a relatively clean source. Just make sure they're not hanging from anything that could leach toxins into the ice. In urban environments, check for abandoned machinery or vehicles. Radiator fluid might have leaked into snow or water nearby, so approach these areas with extreme caution. But sometimes, the condensation from undisturbed machinery can provide small amounts of relatively clean water. It's not much, but in the fight to stay alive, every drop counts. For those of you lucky enough to find canned food, don't overlook the liquid inside. Canned vegetables, soups, even fruits, those liquids can serve as both hydration and nutrition. Don't throw them away. Same goes for thawed meats if you're scavenging. The juices can be boiled down into a drinkable form if you're careful. One more thing, always keep an eye on your storage. If you're melting ice and snow but don't have proper containers, you're fighting an uphill battle. Even the most improvised container, old bottles, tin cans, even tightly wrapped plastic, can save your life. Seal them as tightly as you can to keep the cold out and prevent contamination. The key here is discipline. Ration your water carefully. You don't need to gulp it all at once, no matter how thirsty you feel. Sip slowly, conserve what you have, and make every ounce count. This world doesn't make it easy. The freeze complicates everything, even something as simple as a drink of water. But you're still here, still listening, and that tells me you've got what it takes to adapt. This is Station Below Zero, and we're just getting started. Stay with me. There's more you need to know. Let's talk about shelters, and specifically underground shelters. If you're still out there, exposed to the elements, you've probably noticed by now that surface-level refuges are a gamble at best. The wind can strip a roof off in seconds, and even the sturdiest walls eventually give way to the relentless cold. That's why, if you have the option, you should go underground. Subways, tunnels, basements. Anywhere that takes you below the surface is your best chance at surviving the unrelenting freeze. Start by assessing your entry point. Many underground structures have been abandoned or buried under layers of snow and ice, and not all of them are stable. Look for signs of collapse. Cracks in the walls, buckled doors, or ceilings sagging under the weight of ice above. If you see any of these, don't take the risk. It's not worth being buried alive. If the structure looks intact, approach cautiously and test the ground ahead of you. Ice can hide sinkholes or crumbling stairs. Take your time. Once you're inside, the first thing to focus on is air quality. Underground spaces can become death traps if the air isn't circulating. Stale air is a sign of trouble, low oxygen, high levels of carbon dioxide, or even toxic gases. If you have a candle or lighter, use it as a makeshift air test. A steady flame means you're probably okay for now. A flickering or dying flame, get out immediately. Assuming the air checks out, your next priority is sealing yourself off from the cold. The entrance to your shelter is the weakest point, the one place where the freeze will try to creep in. Block it off as best you can. Snow can act as an excellent insulator. Pack it tightly around doors or windows to block drafts. If you have tarps, blankets, or plastic sheeting, use them to create a barrier. Layering is key. The more layers between you and the cold, the better. Now let's talk about heat. Underground shelters are naturally insulated from the wind, but they're not immune to freezing temperatures. If you have a way to generate heat, use it wisely. Fires are effective but dangerous in enclosed spaces. Make sure there's ventilation to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning, even if it means cracking a small opening somewhere. If you don't have fire, body heat can make a difference. Huddle with others if you're not alone, or wrap yourself in as many layers as possible. Light is another challenge. The deeper underground you go, the darker it gets, and darkness can be as dangerous as the cold. If you've scavenged any flashlights, lanterns, or even candles, conserve their use. Batteries will run out faster in freezing conditions, so keep them close to your body when not in use to preserve their charge. Reflective surfaces can help amplify light, mirrors, foil, or even polished metal. Position them strategically to make the most of what little light you have. While you're securing the basics, don't forget about food and water. Underground spaces often retain some moisture, and you might find frozen pipes or pools of ice if you're lucky. Just remember, nothing is safe to drink until it's been boiled or purified. For food storage, the cold can actually work in your favor. Keep your supplies off the ground to avoid pests, but don't store them directly against the walls, as the freeze can damage certain items. Noise discipline is crucial. Sound travels differently underground, and you don't know who or what might be nearby. Keep your movements quiet, your voice low. If you're using tools to break into a space or build barricades, work as quickly and silently as possible. Echoes can carry farther than you think, and not everyone, or everything, out there is friendly. One of the biggest threats in underground shelters is the risk of collapse. If you feel tremors or hear the groan of shifting ice above, it's a warning. Have an exit strategy planned at all times. Mark your path with something visible, scraps of cloth, chalk marks, or even small piles of rubble. In a panic, it's easy to get lost in the labyrinth of tunnels and chambers. Always know the way back to the surface, even if it's the last place you want to go. Finally, remember that underground shelters are not a permanent solution. They're a temporary refuge, a place to regroup and plan your next move. The cold may not reach as quickly, but isolation, lack of resources, and structural risks make these spaces dangerous over time. If you're lucky enough to find a stable and well-stocked shelter, use it wisely, but don't let it become a prison. This frozen world doesn't leave us with many good options, but going underground can give you a fighting chance. Just keep your wits about you, assess every risk, and remember that survival isn't about finding the perfect solution. It's about making the best of what you've got. This is Atlas, and there's more to come. Stay with me. There's something out there, survivors. I don't mean the cold or the wind or the frozen ruins. We know about those. No, I'm talking about life. A faint signal, barely strong enough to register, but it's there. Somewhere to the north, about 200 miles from my location, I picked up what sounded like a transmission. It wasn't clear, and most of it was swallowed by static, but there were patterns, pauses, rhythms that didn't feel random. Could mean someone else is broadcasting. Someone else is alive. Now, I don't want to raise false hope. We've all seen how the cold warps everything, even sound. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's real and what's just the echo of a world that used to be. But this wasn't the wind, and it wasn't an automated signal. It had human intention behind it, and that's enough for me to pay attention. If you're within range, you should be paying attention too. The signal came in faint but consistent, a series of short bursts followed by long pauses. Could be Morse code, though I couldn't make out the full pattern. Could be someone testing their equipment, trying to reach anyone left out here. Either way, it means there's a possibility, a slim one, but a possibility that you're not as alone as you think. The signal strength suggests it's coming from a high location. If you're anywhere near mountains or elevated ground to the north, keep your ears open and your equipment ready. Old shortwave radios, ham setups, anything that can pick up a signal might give you a chance to triangulate its origin. Don't underestimate what you can find in the ruins. Even broken radios can be scavenged for parts, and with enough ingenuity, you can make something functional. Let's talk about your setup. If you're trying to listen for signals, you need to find a quiet spot. The less interference around you, the better. Buildings with metal frames can distort transmissions, and so can dense clusters of ice. Look for open areas or natural clearings where the air feels still. Sometimes the cold works in your favor. Low temperatures can improve radio wave propagation over certain distances, but you'll need patience. These signals come and go, and if you're not paying attention, you might miss them. If you hear anything unusual, don't assume it's meaningless. Static has a way of masking intent. A broken phrase, a fragmented tone, even a series of unrecognizable clicks could be someone's desperate attempt to reach out. Record it if you can. Play it back. Slow it down, listen again. Survival now depends on the smallest details, and those details might save your life. Let's say you pick up something. What do you do next? First, verify the direction. Adjust your antenna, move locations if necessary, and see if the signal grows stronger or weaker. Once you've narrowed it down, take note of the coordinates. You might not be able to reach the source, but someone else might. Sharing that information could save lives, not just your own, but others too. Now, there's a risk to all this. Not every signal comes from someone with good intentions. Out here, desperation does strange things to people. You've probably seen it yourself, what the cold does to minds stretched thin. A signal might be a trap, a lure to draw survivors into something far worse than isolation. Approach every new discovery with caution. Stay sharp, stay skeptical. If you decide to respond, be deliberate. Use short, clear transmissions and don't give away too much. Say only what's necessary, your position if you trust it's safe, or just a general acknowledgement that you're listening. The less you reveal, the better. For those of you without the equipment to listen for signals, don't lose hope. Signals travel, and sometimes they bounce. You don't need to be near the source to catch the echoes. Keep your ears open for anything out of the ordinary. Unfamiliar sounds, faint hums, distant voices. All of these could mean someone, somewhere, is trying to reach you. I know this might feel like chasing shadows. Maybe it is. But in a world this silent, even the faintest whisper can mean everything. A signal doesn't just carry sound. It carries proof. Proof that someone is fighting the same battle you are, breathing the same cold air, and refusing to let this frozen world take everything. So, keep your radios close and your minds sharper. There's a chance that what I picked up was nothing, but there's also a chance it was everything. Out here, chances are all we've got. This is Atlas. Let's keep going. There's more you need to know. There's a sound out here that's more dangerous than the howling wind or the roar of shifting ice. It's the sound of nothing. Silence. If the world around you goes quiet, you need to pay attention, because silence is the cold's most dangerous warning sign. Most of the time, there's some noise. The wind dragging shards of ice across the ground. the distant creak of frozen structures groaning under their own weight, or even the soft crunch of snow beneath your boots. These sounds mean the world is still in motion, still behaving as it should, even if it's trying to kill you. But when those sounds stop, when the air feels thick and heavy with quiet, that's when you should be afraid. Silence out here doesn't mean peace. It means something is waiting. The ice shifts before it breaks, and the sound it makes is subtle. So subtle that if you're not paying attention, you won't notice it until it's too late. A deep, low groan that travels through the ground, through the air, almost beneath the edge of hearing. It's the precursor to an avalanche, a crevasse opening, or a structure collapsing. When the noise stops altogether, that's when the world has taken a breath, holding it just before everything falls apart. If you're moving across open terrain and it suddenly gets quiet, stop. Don't take another step until you figure out what's wrong. The snow beneath you might not be as solid as it seems. Frost can mask fractures, hiding voids in the ice that can swallow you whole. Test every step with a pole or a sturdy stick. If the snow starts to sag or crack, back away slowly. Running will only make things worse. Near mountains, silence can be even more treacherous. The weight of the snow builds up, layer by layer, until the entire slope becomes unstable. One wrong sound, a shout, a misstep, or even just the vibration of your movement, can trigger an avalanche. When the world goes silent in those places, it's because the snow is about to move. If you hear a sudden, sharp crack or the faint rumble of snow shifting above, don't look up, just run. Move perpendicular to the slope if you can, but don't waste time deciding. Your window for escape is measured in seconds. In urban areas, the dangers of silence take on a different form. The frozen ruins of cities are full of hidden risks. Roofs sagging under the weight of ice, walls leaning just a little too far, or entire floors ready to collapse without warning. Silence in these places means the structure is straining, holding on by a thread. If you hear nothing but your own breath, tread carefully. Every step, every sound you make, could be the one that brings it all crashing down. Silence can also mean something more deliberate. Out here, you're not always alone. Desperation has a way of changing people, twisting them into something unrecognizable. If you've ever been near others and the world goes quiet, no voices, no movement, just the kind of stillness that makes your skin crawl, it's a signal. Someone's watching, someone who doesn't want you to know they're there. When you find yourself in silence, don't panic. Panic gets you killed. Instead, listen. Really listen. The absence of sound is a signal in itself, a message from the environment that something has shifted. Take stock of where you are, what's around you, and what might be waiting just out of sight. Use all your senses. Feel the air. Is it heavier than before? Does it carry the faint scent of something burning? Or maybe the metallic tang of ice on the verge of breaking? These details matter. If you're hunkered down in a shelter and the noise outside suddenly stops, don't assume it's safe to come out. The cold has a way of luring you into a false sense of security. It's patient, waiting for you to make the first mistake. Stay where you are and wait for the world to start moving again. The quiet is temporary, but your life isn't. Even the smallest sounds can save you. The drip of melting ice, the groan of shifting snow, the faint echo of something moving in the distance. All of these are signs that the world is still active. Pay attention to them. Learn to recognize them. Out here, sound isn't just a warning. It's a lifeline. Silence doesn't last forever. It's a pause, a brief moment before the cold decides to remind you who's in control. Use that moment wisely. Whether you're standing on thin ice, trapped in the shadow of a mountain, or hiding in the ruins of a city, silence is your chance to act, to prepare, to survive. This is Atlas. Listen closely, and don't let the quiet catch you off guard. There's more to come. Stay with me. Let's talk about tools, the kind that keep you alive out here. In this frozen world, the difference between surviving and becoming part of the landscape often comes down to what you have in your hands. Tools aren't just objects anymore. They're lifelines, extensions of your will to keep going. If you're still listening, you probably already have a few basics, but let me tell you, it's not just what you carry. It's how you use it. Start with the essentials. Something to cut, something to light a fire, something to protect yourself, and something to carry what you find. If you don't have those four things, make it your priority to find or improvise them. A blade, for example, doesn't have to be fancy. Scavenge a kitchen knife, break off a piece of sharpened metal, or repurpose broken glass if you have to. You need something sharp, sturdy, and easy to wield. Knives aren't just for protection. You'll need them for cutting through frozen rope, breaking ice, or shaping wood into something useful. If you're lucky enough to find a multi-tool, keep it close. The pliers, screwdriver, and file will all find their uses. Multi-tools are rare out here, but if you come across one, it might as well be gold. Next, fire starting tools. A lighter is your best friend, simple, reliable, and easy to use. But lighters don't last forever, especially in sub-zero temperatures. The fluid evaporates, the mechanisms freeze, and you'll be left with nothing if you don't have a backup plan. Matches work if they're waterproof, but always carry a fire steel or ferro rod. These things spark no matter how wet or cold they get, and that spark can mean the difference between freezing and staying alive. Practice with it. Striking a fire steel isn't as simple as it looks, and you don't want to figure it out in a crisis. Let's talk about protection. Out here, the cold is your primary enemy, but it's not the only one. You might need to defend yourself from others, or from things that don't care if you're human. A sturdy stick or metal pipe can serve as a club. Wrap the handle with cloth for grip and keep it within reach. If you're skilled enough to make a spear or a bow from scavenged materials, do it. Distance is your ally in any confrontation. Carrying supplies is another overlooked skill. Backpacks are ideal, but they're not always available or intact. Improvised bags can be made from tarps, sheets, or even jackets. Tie the ends securely and distribute the weight evenly to avoid straining yourself. If you're carrying water, keep it close to your body to prevent freezing. Even the strongest pack won't help you if your supplies are ruined by the cold. Snowshoes might not seem like a priority, but trust me, they can save your life. Walking through deep snow without them is exhausting, and every calorie you burn is one you'll miss later. If you can't find snowshoes, make them. Use branches, bent metal, or even woven strips of cloth to distribute your weight. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to work. Improvised tools are often your best bet. The world may be broken, but it's full of remnants waiting to be repurposed. A car's windshield wiper can be turned into a blade. A shattered mirror becomes a signal. Wire, rope, and tape can all be salvaged and adapted. If you find duct tape, guard it like a treasure. It's one of the most versatile tools you'll ever have. Light is another critical tool. The deeper the cold, the darker it gets, and navigating without light is a death sentence. Flashlights and headlamps are ideal, but batteries drain quickly in freezing temperatures. Keep spares close to your body to preserve their charge. If you're out of batteries, consider torches. A piece of cloth soaked in oil or grease can burn long enough to get you through the dark. But be careful. Fire in confined spaces or near unstable structures can do more harm than good. Finally, don't underestimate the value of a map and compass. GPS is unreliable at best now, and landmarks shift under snow and ice. A paper map might seem outdated, but it doesn't rely on power or signals. Mark your routes, track your movements, and always know where your exits are. The compass will keep you oriented when everything else fails. The key to survival isn't just having tools. It's knowing how to use them, maintain them, and adapt them to your needs. A blade dulls if you don't sharpen it. A fire steel is useless if you don't practice striking it. A map won't save you if you don't know how to read it. Take the time now while you can to familiarize yourself with what you've got. This frozen world isn't forgiving, but it's full of opportunities for those who know where to look. Your tools are more than objects. They're an extension of your will to live. Treat them as such and they'll carry you farther than you think. This is Atlas. Let's keep going. There's more you need to know. Frostbite. It's one of the cold's cruelest weapons, and if you're not prepared, it'll take pieces of you before you even realize what's happening. Fingers, toes, ears, even the tip of your nose, it doesn't discriminate. The cold claims what it touches, and it doesn't give it back. The first thing you need to know is how to recognize the warning signs. Frostbite doesn't happen all at once. It starts with a feeling, tingling, numbness, or a sharp, stinging pain in your extremities. At first, you might think it's nothing, just the usual discomfort of the cold. That's your first mistake. Pay attention to those sensations. They're your body's way of telling you something's wrong. As the frostbite sets in, your skin changes. It turns red, then pale, then waxy and white. That waxy texture is your biggest warning. It means the tissue is freezing solid. If it's not treated immediately, the damage becomes permanent. If the area starts to turn blue or black, you're in the danger zone. That's dead tissue, and dead tissue doesn't heal. The most vulnerable areas are the ones farthest from your heart. Fingers and toes, the tips of your ears, your nose. These are the parts of your body that lose heat the fastest because your blood flow prioritizes keeping your core warm. If you're not protecting these areas properly, you're leaving them exposed to the cold's bite. The best defense against frostbite is prevention. Layering is critical. Wool or synthetic gloves and socks are your first line of defense. Avoid cotton at all costs. Cotton traps moisture, and moisture is your enemy in the cold. Wet fabric pulls heat away from your body faster than air. And once it freezes, it's as good as wearing ice against your skin. If you're caught without proper gear, improvise. Wrap your hands and feet in anything insulating. Scarves, rags, even strips of plastic or paper if that's all you have. The goal is to trap heat and block the wind. Duct tape, if you have it, can seal up makeshift coverings and prevent the cold from seeping in. Now, let's say you've already noticed the signs of frostbite. The first rule is simple. Don't rub the affected area. It's tempting, I know. You'll think that rubbing it will restore circulation and warm it up. But here's the truth. Rubbing frostbitten skin can cause microscopic ice crystals to tear through your tissue, making the damage even worse. Instead, warm the area gradually. If you have access to warm, not hot water, use it. Submerge the frostbitten area for 15 to 30 minutes. You'll feel a prickling or stinging sensation as the tissue begins to thaw. That's a good sign. It means blood flow is starting to return. But if the water's too hot, you'll risk scalding the already damaged skin. Aim for water that's just above body temperature. If warm water isn't available, use body heat. Tuck frostbitten fingers into your armpits or press them against your stomach. If it's your toes, remove your boots and socks and wrap them against the warmest parts of your body. Your core temperature is your greatest resource, and it's often the only thing standing between you and permanent damage. Once the area has thawed, keep it warm. Refreezing thawed tissue is catastrophic. It causes even more severe damage and increases the risk of gangrene. If you're on the move, make sure the affected area is protected from the elements. Use extra padding or insulation, and don't let it get exposed again. Hydration and nutrition are also crucial. Frostbite isn't just about the cold. It's about your body's inability to keep blood flowing to your extremities. Staying hydrated helps your circulation, and consuming high-calorie foods gives your body the energy it needs to fight the cold. If you're dehydrated or starving, your body will pull resources away from your limbs to keep your core alive. There's another danger you need to be aware of: frostnip. It's the precursor to frostbite. The skin might feel cold, tingly, or even painful, but it hasn't frozen yet. This is your chance to stop the damage before it gets worse. Warm the area immediately, just as you would with frostbite, and monitor it closely. Frostnip doesn't cause permanent damage, but if ignored, it quickly escalates. Sometimes, frostbite isn't avoidable. You might be caught in a storm without the proper gear, or you might have to sacrifice warmth to save something more important, your life or someone else's. If it happens, don't blame yourself. The cold doesn't fight fair, but what you do after frostbite sets in can mean the difference between losing a finger and losing your life. You're fighting against the elements, against a world that's turned hostile, but you've got one advantage: knowledge. You know what to look for, what to do, and what not to do. That knowledge is your armor. Use it wisely and keep moving. This is Atlas, and there's still more you need to know. Stay close. If you're near a city or what's left of one, you're sitting on a goldmine of resources. The problem is that gold mine is buried under ice, snow, and danger. Urban ruins can provide you with food, tools, and shelter, but they can also kill you if you're not careful. The cold doesn't care about concrete and steel. It seeps through everything, turning cities into frozen tombs. If you're planning to scavenge, you need to be smart, fast, and prepared. Start with a plan. Wandering aimlessly through frozen streets is a good way to get lost or worse. Before you move, identify what you need most: food, medical supplies, building materials. Every trip into the ruins should have a purpose. Map out your route if you can. If you've got an old paper map, mark potential targets: supermarkets, pharmacies, hardware stores, even schools. If you don't have a map, rely on memory or landmarks. Once you're inside the city, everything will look the same: white, lifeless, and unfamiliar. Your first target should always be food and water. Supermarkets are obvious choices, but most of them were stripped clean during the first wave of panic. Still, don't overlook them entirely. Canned goods are often hidden in back rooms, storage closets, or under shelves. Look for places people might not have thought to check. Freezers are worth a glance too. The cold might have preserved some items that would have spoiled otherwise. In restaurants, kitchens, and cafeterias, check for cooking oil, salt, sugar, and other non-perishables. Even small amounts can go a long way. And don't forget about vending machines. They're easy to miss, but those tightly sealed bags of chips and candy can still be edible even now. Smash the glass if you have to, but be careful. Broken glass and frostbitten fingers don't mix well. Next, look for medical supplies. Pharmacies and hospitals are ideal, but they're also likely to be picked over. That doesn't mean they're empty. Look in drawers, cabinets, or anywhere that might be overlooked. Bandages, antiseptics, and over-the-counter medications are invaluable. If you find prescription drugs, only take what you know how to use. Misusing medication can be as dangerous as not having it at all. Hardware stores are treasure troves for survivors. Nails, screws, duct tape, rope, and tools. All of these can be salvaged and repurposed. Even broken tools can be repaired or adapted if you've got the skill. Look for tarps, plastic sheeting, or anything that can serve as insulation. Pipes and metal scraps can be used for weapons, snowshoes, or makeshift shelters. The trick is to think creatively. Out here, almost anything can have a second life. Schools and libraries might not seem like priorities, but they're worth a stop if you've got the time. Textbooks, survival manuals, or even old maps can provide invaluable information. Knowledge is as much a resource as food or firewood. And don't overlook the furniture. Desks, chairs, and shelves can be broken down for firewood or building materials. While you're scavenging, keep an eye on the condition of the buildings you're entering. Many structures weren't built to handle the weight of this much snow and ice. Roofs collapse, walls crumble, and floors give way without warning. Look for signs of instability: sagging beams, cracks in the walls, or floors that feel soft underfoot. If something doesn't look or feel right, trust your instincts and get out. The cold itself is another danger. Temperatures inside buildings can be even lower than outside, especially if they've been sealed off. Dress warmly and bring extra layers if you can. Avoid staying in one place too long. The longer you're exposed to the cold, the harder it becomes to keep moving. Watch for other survivors, too. Not everyone you meet out here will be friendly. Desperation makes people unpredictable. If you see signs of someone else scavenging, footprints in the snow, disturbed piles of debris, assume they're still nearby. Avoid confrontation if possible. If you do have to interact, keep your distance and stay on guard. Wild animals are another concern. The freeze has driven many species closer to urban areas in search of food. They're hungry just like you, and that makes them dangerous. If you hear movement in the shadows or catch sight of tracks that aren't yours, stay alert. Keep a weapon within reach and be prepared to defend yourself if necessary. Finally, know when to stop. Scavenging is a calculated risk, and there's a fine line between determination and recklessness. If the weather turns, if the structure starts to creak, or if you're running out of energy, leave. Whatever you're looking for isn't worth your life. There's always another day, another opportunity. Urban ruins are dangerous, yes, but they're also full of potential. With the right mindset and a little luck, you can find what you need to keep going. Just remember that every step you take into those frozen streets is a gamble. Play it smart, play it safe, and take only what you need. This is Atlas. Let's keep going. There's more you need to know. If you're out there scavenging, you're already playing a dangerous game. The ruins of this world are full of things that can kill you just as surely as the cold. You might be thinking about what you can find, what you can use, but don't let the promise of supplies blind you to the risks. The frozen landscape is treacherous, and one wrong move can be your last. The first hazard is the ground itself. Ice and snow cover everything, masking what's underneath. A street might look solid, but it could be hiding sinkholes, shattered pavement, or even open sewer grates. Always test your footing before you commit to a step. Use a pole, a stick, or anything long and sturdy to probe ahead of you. If the snow gives way or you feel a hollow echo, back off immediately. Falling into a hidden pit or crevasse in this weather is as good as a death sentence. Buildings are no safer. The weight of snow and ice on rooftops is immense, far more than most structures were designed to handle. If you're entering a building, check the walls and ceiling first. Cracks, sagging beams, or even small piles of fallen debris are signs that the structure might not hold for much longer. Move quickly but carefully. You don't want to be inside when the roof comes down. Frozen staircases are another risk. Ice forms unevenly, and what looks like a solid step might crumble under your weight. Always keep one hand on the railing or wall if you can. If there's no support, crawl instead of walking upright. It might feel slower, but it's safer. A fall in these conditions can mean a broken bone, and out here, that's a death sentence unless you're incredibly lucky. Windows and doors are deceptive. Ice can warp frames, making them unstable. A window might shatter when you least expect it, sending shards of glass flying. Doors can stick, then give way suddenly, throwing you off balance or slamming shut behind you. If you're opening something frozen shut, do it slowly and deliberately. Keep your weight balanced and be ready to step back if something shifts unexpectedly. Let's talk about what's inside. The cold preserves everything, but not all of it is safe. Food, for example, might look fine on the outside, but freezing and thawing can break down seals and let bacteria in. Check every can for bulges or leaks. If the lid is loose or the contents look or smell off, don't risk it. A bout of food poisoning out here is just as deadly as frostbite. Frozen liquids are equally risky. Water that's been sitting in old pipes or containers can pick up contaminants like rust, oil, or even chemicals from the environment. If you're taking water from a frozen source, always purify it first. Boil it, filter it, or both if you can. If you can't do either, mark it as a last resort and move on. Hidden hazards aren't always environmental. Scavenging brings you into conflict with other survivors, and not all of them are friendly. If you see signs that someone else has been in the area, footprints, disturbed snow, or recently opened doors, be cautious. They might still be nearby, watching to see if you're a threat or an opportunity. Always keep your guard up. Carry a weapon, even if it's just a sturdy stick or a sharp piece of metal. Don't draw attention to yourself by making unnecessary noise or leaving obvious tracks. If you do encounter someone, assess the situation quickly. Are they armed? Do they look desperate? Desperation makes people unpredictable. Sometimes walking away is the best move you can make. Wildlife is another unpredictable danger. Most animals have retreated from the frozen cities, but some have adapted. Wolves, coyotes, and even scavenging birds have been spotted in urban areas, drawn by the promise of food or the weakness of humans. If you hear movement that's too regular to be the wind, stop and listen. Animals are creatures of habit. They'll circle, stalk, or scavenge in patterns. If you can recognize those patterns, you can avoid a direct encounter. One of the most insidious hazards in the ruins is overconfidence. The cold does strange things to your mind. It numbs you not just physically, but mentally. You'll start to feel invincible, like you can push just a little farther, take just one more risk. That's when the mistakes happen. You'll forget to check your footing, ignore the creak of a sagging floor, or overlook a small detail that turns into a catastrophe. Stay sharp. Stay focused. Finally, time is your enemy. The longer you spend scavenging, the more vulnerable you become. The cold drains your energy, your body heat, and your willpower. Set a time limit before you start and stick to it. If you haven't found what you need within that window, cut your losses and head back. Supplies mean nothing if you don't live long enough to use them. Scavenging isn't just about finding what you need, it's about surviving the search. Every step you take into the ruins is a gamble, but it's one you can win if you're prepared. Remember, the frozen world doesn't care about your plans or your intentions. It's always looking for a way to claim you. Don't give it one. This is Atlas. Let's keep moving. There's still more to know. If you found someone else out here, anyone, you've already beaten the odds. The cold isn't just a physical enemy. It isolates, cuts us off, and makes it easier to believe that we're alone. But we're not meant to be alone. If you've made contact with another survivor, whether by chance or through a signal, hold on to that connection. It could save both your lives. The first thing you need to do is assess trust. This world has changed people, pushes them to the edge, and not everyone handles that edge the same way. Approach cautiously, but don't let paranoia ruin the opportunity. Watch their movements, their posture, their tone. Are they tense, desperate, overly aggressive? Or are they guarded but cooperative, just as wary of you as you are of them? If you're meeting someone for the first time, keep the interaction neutral. Don't reveal too much too quickly. They don't need to know how much food you have, where your shelter is, or what tools you're carrying. Share enough to build a foundation of trust, but nothing more. Trust takes time. It's a fragile thing out here, but it's also a necessity. Communication is your next priority. If you're lucky enough to have a functioning radio, use it to keep in touch. Agree on a specific frequency and a schedule for check-ins. That way, if one of you gets into trouble, the other knows when and where to look. If radios aren't an option, create physical markers, symbols, signs, or even trails of disturbed snow to guide each other. Simple patterns can mean the difference between finding your way back to someone or losing them forever. Once you've established a connection, consider what you can share. Resources are always a point of tension, especially when they're scarce. If you have more than you need, offering a little can go a long way toward building trust. But if you're running on fumes yourself, be honest about it. Pretending you have more than you do will only lead to conflict later. Division of labor is another important factor. Out here, survival is a full-time job, and two people working together can cover more ground than one. Decide who's better suited to what tasks. Maybe one of you is stronger, better at lifting heavy debris or carrying supplies. Maybe the other has sharper eyes for spotting hidden dangers or scavenging efficiently. Play to each other's strengths and let those strengths dictate your roles. There's strength in numbers, but there's also risk. More people means more mouths to feed, more bodies to keep warm, and more chances for mistakes. If your connection grows to include a small group, make sure everyone understands the rules. Cooperation is vital, but so is clarity. Miscommunication out here doesn't just lead to arguments, it leads to fatalities. Conflict resolution is something most people overlook until it's too late. Tensions will rise. They always do when survival is on the line. If a disagreement comes up, deal with it immediately. Don't let it fester. Be clear about your needs and expectations, and encourage the same from others. A group that can't communicate is a group that falls apart. One of the biggest challenges in working with others is balancing self-preservation with the needs of the group. You have to ask yourself, how much are you willing to give? How much can you take without taking too much? There's no simple answer, but you'll know it when you feel it, when the scales tip too far in either direction. If you're traveling together, stay close but not too close. Spread out just enough to cover more ground and reduce the risk of losing everyone at once in an accident, like an avalanche or collapsing structure. Keep each other within sight or earshot, and agree on a signal to regroup if you're separated. Shared shelter is another challenge. If you're combining resources to stay warm and protected, make sure the space can handle the added strain. Insulation, airflow, and space all matter. Too many people in a cramped area can lead to suffocation or worse. Too few people in a large area means the heat dissipates faster than you can generate it. The hardest part of finding others is the uncertainty. Are they safe? Are you? The cold doesn't just freeze the world, it freezes trust, too. But if you don't try, if you don't make the effort to connect, you'll never know what you might have gained. Don't forget that finding others isn't just about survival. It's about hope. It's about remembering what it means to be human in a world that's tried to strip that away. A shared meal, a laugh, even just a few words exchanged over the radio can remind you that you're not just surviving, you're living. If you're still searching for someone, keep looking. If you've found them, hold on. And if you've lost them, don't give up. In a world as cold and empty as this one, the warmth of another person is worth everything. This is Atlas. Stay close. There's more you need to know. This is Atlas, and if you've stayed with me this far, you've already proven something to yourself. Survival out here isn't just about grit or luck. It's about persistence. It's about holding on, even when the world tells you to let go. Every second you spend listening, every moment you spend fighting against this cold, frozen hell, is proof that you're stronger than you think. But survival isn't just an act. It's a decision. Every day you wake up and decide to keep moving, to keep breathing, to push forward even when the odds feel insurmountable. The freeze takes everything it can from you, your warmth, your energy, your hope, but it can't take your will unless you let it. That's the part of you it can never touch. Right now, wherever you are, take a moment to look around. Your shelter, your tools, the supplies you've managed to gather. It might not feel like much, but it's yours. Every item in your possession, every step you've taken to secure it, is a victory. Survival isn't measured in grand gestures. It's the small things that matter. A fire that stays lit through the night. A can of food you thought was empty but wasn't. A safe place to rest for a few hours without fear. These are your triumphs. The cold is unrelenting, yes, but it isn't unbeatable. You've seen the cracks in its armor. You've felt the warmth of a fire you built yourself, the strength of a shelter you reinforced, the taste of food you scavenged from a frozen ruin. These moments remind you that the cold doesn't control everything. Not yet, not while you're still here. The freeze thrives on isolation, on the belief that you're alone. But you're not. You've heard my voice, and I've heard the echoes of yours. Out here, connection is survival. It's the thread that keeps us from unraveling entirely. Whether it's a signal you pick up on your radio or a chance encounter with another survivor, every connection you make is a rebellion against the silence. If you're listening now, know this: you are part of something bigger than yourself. You're one of the threads holding the remnants of humanity together. It doesn't matter if you're in a crumbling city, a snowbound forest, or an underground shelter miles from anywhere. Your survival matters. Every day you endure is another day we defy this frozen apocalypse. There will be moments when it feels impossible to go on. The cold will whisper to you, telling you it's easier to give in, to stop fighting, to let the frost take over. In those moments, remember this: the world didn't end because you weren't strong enough. It ended because it was fragile. But you're still standing. You've outlasted the floods, the storms, and the freeze that came after. You've proven that you're anything but fragile. Think about the people who might be out there somewhere in the frost. The ones listening to this broadcast alongside you, even if you can't see them. They're fighting the same battles you are, facing the same dangers, and holding on to the same hope. You're not alone in this, no matter how far apart we all seem. Survival isn't just about staying alive, it's about staying human. It's about remembering why we're fighting in the first place. For the warmth of a fire, for the sound of another voice, for the faintest glimmer of light breaking through the clouds. These are the things the cold can't take, the things that keep us moving forward. If you've been listening for a while, you know that I've been through my own share of darkness. There were moments I wasn't sure I'd make it, moments when the cold felt stronger than my will. But I'm still here, speaking to you now because I decided not to let it win. And if I can do it, so can you. There's no roadmap for what comes next. No guide to tell us how to rebuild a world that's been frozen solid. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is simply to endure, to hold on to the pieces we have left and keep them safe for as long as we can. Maybe the point is to remind ourselves that even in the face of unimaginable loss, we're still capable of hope. You've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. As long as you're still breathing, there's still a chance. A chance to find warmth, to find others, to find a way through this. The cold hasn't won yet, and as long as we keep moving, it never will. This is Atlas, broadcasting from station below zero. Keep listening, keep moving, keep surviving. We're still here, and as long as we are, there's hope. Over and out.